Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we are diving into one of the most dramatic and shocking developments coming out of the Russia-Ukraine war. Crimea, the region that has been under Russian control since 2014, is once again at the center of explosive headlines. Reports are emerging that Ukraine has launched another powerful strike, leaving parts of Crimea engulfed in flames, and raising questions about how far Kiev is willing to go to reclaim what it sees as its sovereign land. The scale of destruction this time has captured the attention of the world, as visuals of burning depots, damaged bases, and destroyed infrastructure flood the news and social media platforms. The conflict in Crimea is not new, but each attack intensifies the tension and the narrative. Ukraine has made it clear that Crimea is non-negotiable, and this latest operation underscores its determination. The strikes have reportedly targeted military sites, logistical hubs, and even critical supply routes that Russia has depended on to sustain its war efforts across southern Ukraine. The symbolism of Crimea burning again is huge, as Russia has long considered the peninsula a crown jewel of its strategic and political ambition. Every hit on Crimea sends a message to Moscow that its control is not absolute, and it fuels the larger debate over how sustainable Russia's occupation really is in the long run. These attacks are not happening in isolation. Ukraine has been building its capabilities with precision strikes, drone technology, and Western-supplied weapons, giving it the ability to push the fight deep into occupied territory. Crimea has been one of the most fortified areas in the Russian arsenal, and yet Ukraine has repeatedly managed to strike ammunition depots, naval assets, and key supply lines such as the Kerch Bridge. The fact that Ukraine can carry out such operations is both a testament to its evolving military power and a serious embarrassment for Russia, which claims to have near-impenetrable defenses in the peninsula. The significance of Crimea goes beyond military value. It is a symbol of national pride for Russia and a rallying point for Putin's political base. Losing control or even appearing weak in Crimea would be devastating for the Kremlin, both at home and abroad. That is why every attack on Crimea carries weight far greater than the immediate battlefield results. The explosions and fires might destroy weapons and supplies, but the psychological impact on Russia's narrative is even deeper. This makes the stakes incredibly high for both sides. Ukraine sees each strike as a step closer to reclaiming sovereignty, while Russia sees it as a direct challenge to its legitimacy and strength. As flames continue to burn in parts of Crimea, the world is left asking how Moscow will respond. Historically, Russia has retaliated with escalations whenever its territory or key assets have been hit. We have seen massive missile barrages, airstrikes, and attempts to cripple Ukraine's energy grid in the past as payback for Crimea attacks. The question is whether Putin is willing to go even further this time, given how humiliating the latest damage appears to be. There is also the looming risk of nuclear rhetoric, something Russia has periodically used to signal its willingness to defend Crimea at all costs. While many analysts doubt Moscow would actually deploy nuclear weapons, the very possibility adds a dangerous layer of uncertainty to the conflict. On the Ukrainian side, morale has surged with each successful strike on Crimea. For ordinary Ukrainians, seeing Russian military strongholds in flames is not just a tactical victory, but a symbolic one. It reinforces the idea that the war is not hopeless, and that even Russia's most fortified positions are vulnerable. These operations are also critical for Ukraine's ongoing efforts to maintain international support. By showing that Western-supplied weapons are being used effectively to hit meaningful targets, Kiev strengthens the argument that continued aid and advanced systems are worth the investment. In many ways, Crimea has become the proving ground where Ukraine demonstrates its ability to push back against a much larger adversary. But while the images of burning fuel depots and destroyed bases are dramatic, they come with costs and risks. Each strike increases the likelihood of Russian reprisals that devastate Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure. The war has already displaced millions, destroyed homes, and left the country struggling with energy shortages during harsh winters. Ukraine knows that every action it takes in Crimea could trigger a new wave of suffering for its population. But the leadership appears convinced that the long-term goal of liberation outweighs the immediate dangers. The balance between strategic victory and humanitarian cost is delicate, and it defines much of the difficult decision-making in Kiev. Internationally, the Crimea strikes complicate diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the war. Western nations largely back Ukraine's right to reclaim its territory, but they are also wary of being drawn into a direct confrontation with Russia. Each successful Ukrainian strike puts pressure on Western leaders to walk a fine line between supporting Kiev and avoiding escalation that could spill beyond Ukraine's borders. NATO allies have repeatedly expressed solidarity, but they also fear that a dramatic shift in Crimea could push Moscow into unpredictable actions. For countries in Europe, especially those dependent on stability in the Black Sea, the stakes of these attacks are enormous. The economics of the situation also cannot be ignored. Crimea is not only strategically important for Russia's military, but also for its economy, particularly in terms of trade routes and energy supplies. Strikes that disrupt logistics in the peninsula ripple far beyond the battlefield. The Kerch Bridge, for example, has been a critical lifeline for Russia, and each attack on it shakes confidence in Moscow's ability to keep supply lines secure. This, in turn, impacts Russia's war economy and raises questions among its population about the costs of continuing the invasion. When images of burning infrastructure surface, they undermine the Kremlin's claims that life under Russian control is stable and secure. From a broader perspective, Crimea has become a litmus test for the direction of the war. If Ukraine can consistently strike deep into the peninsula and weaken Russia's grip, it could set the stage for a larger counteroffensive or eventual negotiations from a position of strength. Conversely, if Russia manages to fortify its defenses and repel these attacks, it might solidify its control and force Ukraine into a prolonged stalemate. The world is watching closely because the outcome in Crimea could shape not only the war's trajectory, but also the geopolitical order in the region for years to come. As Ukraine celebrates another successful strike, Russia faces a dilemma. To do nothing risks looking weak, but to escalate risks dragging the war into even more dangerous territory. Putin has staked his legacy on the idea that Crimea is Russian forever, so each Ukrainian attack is both a military threat and a personal insult. The coming days and weeks will likely reveal how far Russia is willing to go to maintain its grip, and how far Ukraine is willing to push to break it. The cycle of attack and retaliation shows no sign of ending soon, and each new fire in Crimea only adds fuel to the broader conflict. The burning of Crimea is more than just a battlefield development. It is a symbol of defiance, a challenge to Russia's dominance, and a reminder of the war's high stakes. Ukraine's ability to strike so deep into occupied territory demonstrates both resilience and innovation, while Russia's struggle to prevent these attacks exposes cracks in its narrative of control. As long as the flames continue to rise over Crimea, the world will keep watching, waiting, and wondering whether this war is headed toward resolution or escalation. The story of Crimea burning again is one of resilience, defiance, and high-risk strategy. For Ukraine, it is a sign of progress and hope. For Russia, it is a reminder of vulnerability and humiliation. For the rest of the world, it is a warning that this conflict is far from over, and that its consequences will shape global politics, security, and stability for years to come. The peninsula has become more than just a piece of land. It is the epicenter of a struggle that continues to define the future of Europe.